Thanks for playing World of Tanks, and thanks for taking a look at this World of Tanks video. You know, there's a lot of power, a lot of advantage to having experience playing this game, learning the maps really well, learning what the different areas on each map might mean, how the different areas in each map might impact, say, where you choose to go as a heavy tank or a light tank or a medium tank or destroyer or arty, what the different areas might mean about playing each of those different types of tanks. And of course there are within each type of tank, say a heavy, say the heavy type, there are different, you know, forms of heavies, and so the different areas of the maps might mean different things for different types of heavy. Some heavies, for example, have really good gun depression. Other heavies, for example, do not. Some are better at side scraping than others are. In this map, this match here in particular is a standard, of course, which that's another thing to keep in mind to consider. A standard match, each team has a capture point, which can result in a defeat if you don't protect it from the enemy vehicles. Normally on this map, these standard matches on this map, this area here to the west, with these two kind of hills with kind of a central valley area, normally this is where the bulk of the fighting takes place, if you will, at least the bulk of the vehicles going to. This is normally where the bulk of the vehicles go to and where they end up fighting the vehicles on the enemy team. In particular, a lot of heavies, because this is relatively short range. You know, another factor that's that's usually kept in mind while you decide where to go on a given map are the number of artillery. Sometimes there are 0. In this case, obviously, there are 2 on each team, which is not irrelevant. That means if you get leave yourself out in the open space, more or less vulnerable to artillery fire, there's a lot of damage there. You can, even if you are a tier 10 heavy or something, you could get 1 or 2 shotted pretty easily from those 2 artilleries. Let's say they both decide to focus on you, both pretty much fire at the same time. It's not too difficult to disappear from the map at that point in time. So here early on, I noticed that a lot of our players, I think all of our heavies, all 3 of them I guess, and some medium tanks, obviously a light tank, probably, I think that was it. They haven't taken out any of our guys so far. So all those guys clearly went over to the east, which, a lot of times you'll get like a light over there, a couple of mediums, maybe several lights, several mediums over there, these upper tiers. Usually you might get like 1 mobile heavy, maybe like a mobile tier 8 or maybe a mobile tier 9 heavy over there, but usually the heavies pretty much will come over here to this west. In this match here, when I saw that kind of start to take place, where we had all of our, at least the bulk of our guys going to the east, all of our heavies, at least half of our mediums, and at least half of our lights going over there, I anticipated that the enemy team would not be deploying in the same way. I had the thought that it would be much more likely that the bulk of the enemy heavies, mediums, things like that would be coming over here to the west. So I chose, rather than to sort of like push forward into the E5 area over here on the west, I chose to stay toward the rear and make use of the advantages that I would have over those enemy heavies, namely mobility, probably first and foremost, some spotting range or some view range. I would have the advantage there, some camo advantage maybe, if there's enough distance and cover for that. Of course, also with this vehicle, I've got some pretty good gun depression and a pretty good hole, kind of front and upper hole, for using that hold down gun depression mode over these ridges, over these hills. So I decided to stay back, slow the enemy advance as much as I could here in the west, again using my mobility to stay out of obvious enemy fire, using my mini map, and then also looking around from enemy tank to enemy tank, making sure that I wasn't giving up shots to the enemy vehicles on my vehicle, losing my hit points, giving those up. Again, using my mobility, using these ridge lines, the gun depression, the front turret armor, to hold this position, slow the advance of the enemy vehicles. Now you can see that we did that really well. Me, that other medium right over there to the left down by our capture circle, and then I think we had a light, certainly a destroyer or two, and then those arties were originally back in there. But we effectively slowed them down so that the bulk of the rest of our team, the rest of our team going over to the east was, they had sufficient time to do their thing over there, get rid of the enemies who were over there, and then eventually come back around to the west and fight off the last of the enemy team that was on the west. Of course, the bulk of the enemy team was in the west. So, I maintained distance, used the advantages that my vehicle had to as much effect as I could to slow down the enemy vehicles without myself getting destroyed, getting damaged too terribly much, so that I provided enough time for my allies to come around and help us finish off the remaining part of that bulk of the enemy vehicles in the west. Thanks for playing World of Tanks. Thanks for taking a look at this World of Tanks video.